I didn't get to talk too much about the mechanics of like how it is that Charles, or as what most people call it, the Illuminati or the deep state, causes the quote unquote black community. And the reason that I say quote unquote black community is because what is black? That's something that people have defined arbitrarily as, well, you've got a certain amount of melatonin or melanin in your skin. So it's just some pigment. I mean, if it's just a pigment, then it's not a community. There's no community of redheads. There's no community of blondes. There's no community of brunettes. But there's a community of black skinned people. That doesn't make sense. Where did this community come from? It was invented because you've got cultures that are completely different from each other. Sudanese, Nigerian, Ethiopian, Zimbabwean. I mean, there's all kinds of countries in Africa, and I'm sure that every single one of them has a diverse culture. Just like France is distinct from Germany, is distinct from Britain, is distinct from Scotland. And even the UK is not a unified culture. So there's no such thing as white, and there's no such thing as black, and there's no such thing as these cultures are not the same thing as your skin color. The cultures are completely different than skin colors. Cultures are something that you can choose to enter or exit, but you cannot choose to love or to hate. You're going to have an affinity towards a culture. That's just built into you. You can't choose that. But what you can choose is you can choose to leave that culture. You can choose to stop participating in it or not. And you could be more or less active in that culture by choice. You cannot choose what your skin color is. So how the fuck do those two things mix? If I can't choose my skin color, then how the fuck do I have a culture that's reflecting my skin color? If I can't even choose the fucking thing, then how the fuck do I ever get out of it? You see how that entraps people? They can't get out of it because they think that that's defining them as a person, which is what culture does. That defines what your values are. That defines what your style is. It defines what your personality is. Defines your spirit. What it is that you're trying to build as a community, a real community, not a bunch of people that have the same skin color, a real community, where people have something in common. So they pull the wool over everybody's eyes, not just black people, but everybody. And this is why I say it's Charles, because Charles is the only one that isn't implicated in this. Charles is the only one that doesn't get harmed by it, and he's the only one that benefits. So it's got to be Charles. Cui bono? I ask that question about anything that I see that's crazy, that doesn't make any damn sense. Well, then it's benefiting someone. It's benefiting someone somewhere, and it's almost always a rich person because rich people can do shit that poor people can't do. It just is that way. That's why people want to get rich, so they can have more power. Anyway, the deep state, the Illuminati, whom I call Charles, that's my pet name for them. It's quicker to say, and there's another backstory to that I stole the word from a song that I heard from Kid Cudi. And he says, in his song, I control my own life. Charles was never in charge. I fucking love that. And so I just stole that from that. I took, Charles, because he was referencing Charles in charge, right? Charles was never in charge. So he says that, and I'm like, I get exactly what he's saying. And that I stole from that. So I don't know if that's an accurate representation of what he thinks. I don't know. But that's what I think he thinks. So that's where I got it from. So it only represents me. I'm the only one that uses that. But I can't claim full credit for it because I didn't invent the show, Charles in Charge. I've never even seen an episode, to be frank with you. And I don't know where, Kid Cudi's reference came from. I'm not a stalker. I don't go through people's bios. I don't know what was in his head when he wrote that. And I know, again, to be frank, I know this is going to come off as offensive, but I also don't care. I use the term because I believe that there's a freedom in art that divorces itself from the artist. You cannot judge an artist by their art any more than you can judge their art by the artist. So I don't, again, between skin color and culture, one of them I can choose, the other one I can't choose. I can't. If I were an artist, I would not be able to choose myself. I wouldn't be able to choose my name. I wouldn't be able to choose who I am, but I can choose whether or not I want to be an artist by producing art. Part of that responsibility is recognizing that very much like a parent, your creation is independent from you. And your creation is going to go off and have its own life. And Pepe the Frog is a great example. Pepe started off being by some apolitical dude that didn't even have any conservative leanings. And Pepe wasn't supposed to be political. He was just supposed to be some silly little frog guy. But now he's being used by all kinds of political people and all kinds of things. And it's turned into a meme. But that's not the original intent of it. And that's the same thing that goes on over and over and over and over throughout society. But what I'm trying to focus on specifically is the mechanics of how slavery still continues to this day, not just with the quote unquote black community, but with anybody that is not Charles, the not Charles community, which is really, a lot of people call it the 99 percenters. Because there's the 1% that owns like half of all the capital in the entire world. Half the money of the entire world sits in 1% of the human population's pockets. And the rest of us, the 99%, we own the other half. So it's 99% versus 1%, 50-50. And that's how it's split economically. So it's said. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's something I've heard. It wouldn't surprise me. But anyway, the 1%, the deep state, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, I call it Charles, whatever you want to call it, that is not whitey. That is not black people. That is not sexually promiscuous females in some community. That's not any of these specific targeted groups. It is the 1%. It is Charles. That is the enemy. Now, you could claim that Charles uses so-and-so as a puppet, and you could pick your favorite version of Charles that you want, but it's all tied back to Charles. It's all part of his shit. And what is he doing? He's keeping the rest of us enslaved, black community included. How? Well, again, since I brought the topic up, but I didn't finish it, these are the mechanics of how Charles keeps the black community down. So you see how I was saying before about, well, there's only 3 industries that most black people try to get into if they're poor, is they'll try to either go for being in the entertainment industry as a musician, or they'll try to be into sports. Usually it's basketball, but also football, and other sports too, but mainly those 2. And then you could be into drugs, be a gangster. So, and a lot of the time they'll try to mix them, usually with the musician and the gangster career mixed. So you've got gangster rap. And that, I think, best represents the quote unquote black community, because that culture kills itself. And that's what it calls being cool. Everything that is considered cool inside of that culture is self-destructive. You have to get bad grades so that you don't ever learn anything. You have to focus on only those 3 industries so that you can't get any other job. And there's overcrowding because all these people are trying to fill such a tiny number of positions. I'll give you an example. I don't even watch sports, and I've seen this. Any time that I've ever looked at a sports clip, any sports clip, almost all the people in it are black. Why? Because it's not that there's so many more black people and it's not that they're genetically better. It's that so many more of them try for that it's like you've got fucking millions of people all trying for this one position. And then, so that one guy that finally does get it, holy shit. Imagine how rare that's a 1 in a million guy. That's what it takes to get all the way there. But you see so many of them that it looks like it's easy. Oh, look, we're all dominating. And that draws even more of them in. And they all try to overcrowd it. And then the competition is so fierce that most of them never end up making it all the way. And a lot of them just dream about it all the time while they're just sitting there working at some entry-level position for the man. And they can't, succeed because every time they tried if they got an A in class, they got beat up. I've heard stories about this happening, that people get beat up, that black kids get beat up in inner city schools because they get good grades and then they get called whitey. It's like, oh, well, you're just trying to be whitey. You're just trying to be like a white kid. And that's what I was saying is like, isn't that sad that you've got people saying that in order to be successful, you have to be a different person, that you can't do anything about it, that you can't just choose to be successful. You're not allowed to choose to be successful because if you try to do that, then they'll just beat you up. Because there's going to be some less successful kid that doesn't think that that's cool, and then you just end up getting beat up. So you contrast that with the culture that the same, if you want to say race, because I don't really believe in race, but if you want to say the same race, the culture back in the 60s was completely different. It was classy. You had songs, for example, like, I don't know much about history or whatever the fuck it is, where he's talking about trying to get an A to get the girl. Imagine trying to fucking sell that nowadays. It would never sell. It wouldn't even sell if you were white. No one wants that anymore. You see, so we're all stuck in the same meat grinder. And we're all looking at each other like, well, you did this, or you did that, or you're like this, or you're like that, and blah, blah, blah. And we're all fighting each other, but none of us seem to be fighting Charles. And who does that benefit? It benefits Charles, and it doesn't make any sense for any of the rest of us. So I don't know why the hell we continue doing that. And a lot of it has to deal with, it's way easier to just do what you're told, do what the TV says. The TV says, if you're black, you have to play sports, or you have to be a musician, or you have to be a gangster. And if you're a physicist, then all you are is a black person who happens to do physics. So your primary role is to fill the role of being the black guy instead of being a physicist. And I don't even have to say his name. And that proves it again. And I have seen it, sir. I have seen your point. And I hope that I have proven it here. It is not cool the way that things have evolved. And I believe that that's not evolution. That's not natural. That's something that has been engineered. And it has been engineered by someone who obviously is not the recipient of this manipulation. So how many layers up is it then, if it's even manipulating him? So that's why I call it Charles, because I don't know who it is. But whoever it is, they have a lot of very powerful people in their pocket, and they can buy doctors and lawyers and bankers and politicians and anybody and everybody that they can possibly finance to represent their interests, but not them. So that we don't ever learn who they are. We only learn what their interest is. And their interest has been pretty obvious and simple. Divide and conquer. Divide us by race, which doesn't exist. Divide us by cultures, which arguably are all arbitrary, and so they're all equally valid, and there's nothing wrong with adopting one over the other. There's no such thing as a cultural appropriation, for example. The conflation between race and culture, which I have no idea how that makes any sense. I guess if you're brain dead and you just don't think about it, then you passively think it makes sense, but I wouldn't call that a thought. I would call that a passive waiting for mommy and daddy's slogan to appear in my head without thinking about it syndrome, which is why we're still in chains. And the very people that it applies to are the only ones that hate and get pissed off and say, oh, but they have no argument. They don't have anything except an insult and a smirk and a laugh and a dismissal, but they have no argument. And they don't support anything, and they can't defend anything, and they can't explain anything without bringing up some stupid heuristic, some stupid thing like, well, you know how white he is. Oh, well, you know how rich people are. Oh, you know how Republicans are. Well, this is the thing Democrats do. Fucking libtards. I don't buy it. I think that all of that shit's engineered. I think all that shit's fake. Fuck all that shit. I don't support any of it. And if you support it, fuck you. Moving on. Now, hopefully I've lost everybody. Hopefully everybody hates me. Have you ever seen humanity united in anything but hatred? I've never seen it. I wonder when we'll see that day. Hate that.